diving in what exactly is the competence framework of e-mentoring that was drafted in the frames of the project. So after all the research that we've done, the framework and all the focus group, we actually focused and made a list, so a framework of the competencies that an e-mentor would need as a minimum. So it's a basis. This is not a complete list. Feel free to add up to those, but this is the basic that will be covered in the frames of our research. Those competencies were based on both the opinions of the focus groups and the national reports. So they were selected out of the 31 competencies that were already mentioned yesterday. Today we will take the time to go in each of the competencies really shortly, just to introduce you to the competence itself. For all of the competencies, you'll find more detailed information in the module that will be developed and will be uploaded in the e-tool that you already seen. So today it's just the introduction. Feel free to ask questions during the whole discussion. So do not wait for the end to ask the question, just feel free to raise...
like yesterday.
Yes.
Let's be very interactive, okay?
Yes.
So basically what we did, as Maggie said, we based the research on the 31 competencies that I showed you yesterday. And based on that, based on the national reports and the focus groups, we amended some of them and we added some out of that list of 31 that were not in the list. So we see and we talk about it very quickly, each one of them. So, number one, ability to learn. A good mentor needs to be able to have a flexible mindset and be able to learn new things. For example, this morning we learned Kahoot. Maybe many of us didn't know about it. We learned Moodle. We learned that there are new tools over there to manage that kind of other generations that we're not familiar with, simply because we're older and we come from different backgrounds. All right, so the flexibility, the brain flexibility to be able to learn new things and to adapt to new realities. That's clear enough, right? Understand the role of the mentor. This is hot, guys. This is super important, like we were saying yesterday. You need to know who you are at that very moment, in that very process. You need to know what your boundaries are. You need to know the limits and the horizons of your role. So are you a psychologist? No, you're not. Are you a friend? No, you're not. Not necessarily. You can have a friendly relationship as a mentor because you're a friendly person, you act in a friendly way, but you're not a friend. It's not that your mentee can call you at 3 a.m. at night to share his concerns, to cry, to vent, all right? So it's very important for you to understand what the role is, not to burn you. It's to cover your shoulders, all right? Ability to use new technologies and to enhance digital literacy.
We've already started with developing your competence in this part. So in the digital literacy, I included all of the tools that are directly related to the work of the mentor. So those might be the communicational platforms from one part. So Teams, Google Meet, Zoom, WhatsApp maybe, Twitch for the new generations. It depends on actually the kind of the relationship. But the mentor should be aware of what are those technologies, how to use them, and to know what are the diverse opportunities that they offer so that the mentor can suggest the best platform for the case. Because even if you decide to use one, maybe in some cases you need to switch, because especially when you're working with needs, they might have specific digital challenges of accessing some of the platforms or knowing how to use them. So the mentor needs to be adapting to actually the needs of the mentees that they're going to work, especially in the digital field, working with disadvantaged groups. The other thing which is very important in this competence is to say that digital literacy nowadays also includes knowledge of etiquette. So how to behave in the digital platforms. We seem to all communicate inside, but do you know what are the rules? Do you know what using caps means? Do you know what the emoticons means? This is something that many specialists neglect. And it's very important. Why? Because the new generation that is now coming to the labor market, the alphas, actually they have a completely new digital language. So have a slang in the digital space. So it's like you need to learn a second language so that you'll be able to understand what are they writing. Why? Because in the digital world, you also have abbreviations. So you should know what those abbreviations are. Why? Because if you're exchanging in the digital, for them it's natural to use them. And if you'd like a confidence relationship, this is something you would consider. So this is also something that your digital literacy will be the basis of support in cases of working with people who would need to work on their own digital competencies. So as yesterday we saw, in your feedback, you need to be able to, let's say, be able to also provide them resources or maybe a support network for developing their own digital literacy of the mentees themselves. So this is why you need a deep understanding in the field. Okay?
And also too, for example, we use emails. Do you think younger generations use emails? So if you tell them, you know, send me an email and we can make an appointment, they would just look at you and say, you know, they would use WhatsApp. But, for instance, when I communicate with my family in Canada, they don't use WhatsApp. Because 90% of the population in Canada has Apple. So they communicate through Apple apps. So they don't even use WhatsApp among the same generations. So it's really important that we understand what the needs are in terms of digital literacy and digital needs in order to address them. And we cannot insist, because I fight a lot with some of my colleagues because they say email is official. It's written, so it can be retained and it can be used, it can be tracked, but it's not the most efficient tool to use. And if it's efficient for you, doesn't mean it's efficient for other people. So again, we need to adapt to new technologies and we need to enhance our mutual understanding of what the best solutions are.
And to add up more, yesterday it was already mentioned a bit, but the digital literacy for a mentor would include also platforms that you can use for time management, for instance, for planning the meetings, or doodles for setting up your schedule. So it's not only the direct platforms that are related to the mentoring world, but also the organization of your own time, space, documents maybe, or setting, let's say, common boards so that the communication, sometimes you would even not need a meeting rather than having just an exchange platform where you can prepare for the next one. So the digital literacy is quite a wide competence, which is getting wider and wider. Why? Because as we already talked a bit, artificial intelligence is also setting field in the field. And artificial intelligence is a tool that we can use for our benefit in all fields. But in order to use it correctly, actually we would need to know how to use that artificial intelligence. In terms of mentoring, or even in counseling, it doesn't matter the field, in education in general, the discussion currently is set on how to prompt so that we can diversify the program, for example. So how can I use artificial intelligence to help me analyze the strengths and the weaknesses of a person? Can the artificial intelligence help me in this? Can maybe the artificial intelligence see some details that my mind is missing? Why? Because sometimes we are focusing on what we know and we miss things that we don't know. So you see the idea. But artificial intelligence can analyze that data for us, so can be supportive. So what we're expecting in the next couple of months even why a couple of months, because the ministries are already developing specifically artificial intelligence for education and counseling. Countries like Bulgaria has already started 2 years ago, so developing a specific software just for that. So we expect that by the end of this year, we will have specific artificial intelligence sites where you can log on and actually create such plans. Support your work, so saving time by some administrative work maybe if you have, because in some organizations in Bulgaria, for example, we see that mentoring has a very huge administrative work next to it, not only the mentoring itself. So how to use cleverly those tools so that you save time for what is worth it, so for the relationship, and how to make the most of the tools that you have so that you can continue working and focusing on the important things.
Thanks, Maggie. This goes back to competence number 1, ability to learn. Because we can use Doodle as much as we want, but if we're not capable to manage our own time, that's a problem. To set aside, and I'm speaking personally, for me it's very hard to set aside some time for people to make Doodle in order to meet with me. I struggle a lot because the calendar is very broad, and it takes time. It takes time to learn how to use your time properly. So it's not only digital, but it's offline as well. So ability to consider diversity. What do you think this means? We talked yesterday about probably the most evident diversity, which is the generational gap. But it could be, for example, the ethnicity, the nationality gap.
And just to add up for the diversity, there's another element that is coming now to the attention, especially in the European Union, because it's a focus of the educational strategies for the next period. And it's also to consider the diversity in the way people learn and plan. Why? Because now the studies have shown that we have people with neurotypical, it's called brain, and people with neurodiverse brain. And because the generations that are coming are more and more neurodiverse, which means that what we consider how to plan, and those SMART goals that we actually mentioned, do not work for them. Why? Because they start from this point and they know that they will reach this point, and usually a neurotypical brain will go straight from here to here, shortest way, a straight line to reach the goal. But a neurodiverse brain will go, oh, I'm really interested in this part, I'll go in this way, 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 in this. They will reach the goal, but they will, in between, they will reach 10 more goals. They will find 10 more things to learn about, 10 more skills to develop. And more children that are born after 2010 are born neurodiverse. Why? Because this is an evolution of humanity. It's a physical evolution of humanity due to some connections in our right and left hemisphere. So you see, this is another type of diversity that we need to be aware of. Why? Because otherwise we're like, I'm doing everything about the SMART goals. Why do they don't work with the new generation? Well, they don't. Why? Because we will need to redevelop those based on the specifics of the generation that are coming. And the betas, to be aware, so those that you'll be working like in 10 years, they even have a completely different way even from those that are in school now. So you see, you need to, let's go back to ability to learn. So we will need to constantly redevelop and relearn even about the diversity of our expression and our way of seeing the world and working with the others. So this is something which is also included in this part of the unit.
I would like to throw a reflection on this. Look at these competences. Do you think they're useful even outside your role as a mentor?
Yes.
You could lead, well, not a better life, but a more aware life, more conscious, a life more in a holistic approach with the other people. So yeah, I'm just throwing the ball just for you. So ability to listen and communicate effectively. We said it yesterday. How you communicate who you communicate to, what, why, you know, the 5 W's. Bearing in mind that whatever you're trying to communicate might be perceived totally differently. Totally. We mentioned some examples yesterday. So, bearing in mind all the diversity, the ability to learn, your role, how you listen and communicate effectively is one of the key abilities that a mentor should have. And how do you understand that you've understood? How do you ensure that what you're listening is actually what the person meant? How do you do that? Asking feedback, asking questions,
The reaction.
seeing the reaction.
What's it called when you repeat back to them? So from
Paraphrase. Paraphrase. Okay, so Vicky, you're saying that, so you've been talking for 5 minutes about some of the issues that you're encountering in your professional life. Okay, Vicky, so let me see if I understood. So you're saying that you have this issue with your boss and that you don't feel happy in your workplace. Is that so? This is how you ensure you understood. Okay? Again, this is tiring. It's consumption. It's energy consuming. But it's worth, because how do you feel, Vicky, after I paraphrased what you said?
Like you understand me?
Like you understand me. Okay, so it's very important. And again, this is not only for the role of a mentor, but if you paraphrase what your kid tells you. So are you telling me you had a bad day at school because the teacher told you, or she shut you down because you did something that she believed was wrong? Yes, mommy. Okay, I can help you. Because if you know, you can do something about it. If you don't know, or if you don't know it fully, or if you know it wrongly, then there's not much you can do about it. You can damage people, actually. It's the other consequences.
Yes, and to add up, again, going back to the differences in the generations, here in the communicate effectively might require extra effort in terms of developing your own language knowledge. What do I mean? In many of the countries now we see the migration processes and the mixing of the populations, which leads to actually developing different slang in some of the communities. So sometimes a mentorship with a person from a disadvantaged community might require you to learn some words that they are using so that you can understand them in the beginning. Afterwards, by paraphrasing, by mirroring what they are saying, actually you can teach them and readjust the language. But in the beginning, to build that trust, you need to talk in the same language. And this is very important, and before it was easier. Why? Because we would know what language the person has as a mother tongue, for example, or what's the main language the person is using. But what is happening now? With the new generation, we see terms that are entering the language that are coming from outer context that if we do not know, we do not understand. I'll give you an example. If you work with young people currently, and those people are in between 20 and 30, most probably they play games. So they use words like noob. Do you know what a noob is? No. It's a loser. And it comes from a Korean. You see? So if you don't speak Korean, most of us don't, you would not understand the description that the mentee maybe is doing for you. So you see, those are terms that they are using in everyday life to explain how they feel. I feel like a noob. And it's a phrase they use. I feel like a noob, it means I feel like a loser. But if you do not know what a noob is, it's okay. On the other one, just another example. For the terms that are coming afterwards, it's getting even more interesting. Like the children that will be, that are now 14, so in the next year that will come, they would say, oh, what a sigma. Right?
Yeah.
Well, sigma is a candidate of the alphabet, what do you mean? But what is a sigma? It's a very cute boy. You see, it's like the, yeah. So it's the alpha, we used to say it's the alpha, but for them it's the sigma. So it's the two ends of the alphabet. So even if you discuss it with your children, you would not be able to understand if you don't speak the language. It's getting even more complicated when you're working with disadvantaged groups that are from migrant background. Why? Because sometimes in the translation it's lost the important things. Why? Because let's say in some languages we have 5-10 words for telling you that I'm upset. And depending on the word I use, I can tell you what's my level of upsetment with what happened or how happy I am. In Bulgaria we have 10 words to explain that I'm happy. And depending on the word you'll see why I'm happy, because the word tells it all. But when I translate it in English, I'm like, I'm happy. Okay, so it's, you see the idea. So working with disadvantaged group that come from the migrant, that have the migrant background or just moved inside, or come from a closed communities where they do not use the official language in their home environment, you need to also be aware of the fact that it's a translation. So maybe they are telling you, I'm happy, but for them happy might mean that that's the lowest scale of excitement. So it's like, okay, so we've translated, you see the idea. This is going back that the need to double check when you're working with people who speak another language. Why? To make sure that we are not lost literally in translation. Especially when those people are not, have not spent a lot of time in the country. This is so true, and it's true for closed communities. So even if you work with needs from who have been born, raised in the country, they have specific terms they use in their closed communities, like especially Romas, different groups of Romas even have specific terms that they would use. So this is very important to consider also while working with people.
But this brings us back to the digital literacy, because there are digital tools that can support us in identifying one out of the 10 adjectives describing the fact that you're happy. For example, there are other tools that we can use, but we need to know them. So we need to have the ability to learn which tools we have available to manage that kind of diversity. So again, you see all these competencies are different from each other, but they're all linked together, and it boils down to the final ability to learn, because it's a constant and continuous learning process. If you want to be empathic, you need indeed to use the dialect, you need to use the slang. And even these wonderful girls over there are from, one is from Tuscany, one is from Marche, two other regions of Italy. They have a different slang. I connect with Benedetta because Benedetta is from Rome. So with Benedetta we have kind of the same slang. But, for example, in Rome, we have north of Rome, which is more posh, south of Rome, which is more popular, and there are we're sort of friendly enemies. But we have different slang. So, I mean, imagine talking to people from different communities, different countries, different backgrounds, how difficult it is, considering that the four of us who speak Italian, the five of us, well, even with Annabelle, we speak the same language. We have a million differences among each other. So imagine how diversity can be enriching, but it can be difficult oftentimes.
Just to also underline that sometimes we also estimated the competence of listening. Yesterday, Alessandra already mentioned how important the listening part is. Why? Because it is the listening that actually provides you the opportunity to further develop the relationship. Because when a person feels seen, feels understood, the person opens to you, so that it's more open to receive the feedback without constraints, to be open to share even things that they would not share to other people that might be useful actually for your work together. And in the listening part, we need to be listening on a deep level. So the mentor, this is why the exhaustion comes, the exhaustion that she's telling. Because first, you would also, you would all the time need to be focused on what you're hearing. So the words, what I'm hearing as content, as information. So what information are the words transmitting to me from the mentee. On the other part, I would also be listening for the tone of the voice, because I can say, I'm happy. Am I happy? Maybe. But I say, oh, I'm so happy. Like yesterday, I was so happy with dinner. You see the idea? My tone of voice tells you more than my words. Even if you don't understand the language that I speak, my expression, my movement, my voice will tell you everything. So you need to be listening to my words as a mentee, to my voice, to my tone. You need to be listening also, you need to be in the listening part, you need to be listening to my physical language. How is my face changing? How is my body changing? Am I approaching you? Am I taking a step back? So those are signs for you what is happening actually in the discussions. Am I in the defense mode? Am I in the receiving open mode? You see the idea? And one more thing in the deep, when we are talking about deep listening, it requires you to listen in the silence. That's the hardest thing to do. Why? Because sometimes the silence tells you more than all the words the mentee has said. Why? Because it is those silences that can show you hesitations, some constraints, personal fears, for example. It's in those pauses sometimes you find the answer. So you also need to listen to those. What do those pauses tell you? What are those pauses filled in? Are they filled with Are they filled with You see the idea? So even the silence tells you so much of what is happening. And as a mentor, you would need to keep focus. So this is called the deep listening in the conversation, so that you hear everything. And sometimes when we were discussing, it's this deep listening that permits you to react based on what you see now in the exact moment, not what you planned, because maybe you planned that today with the person you will work on this and this subject. But then the person comes, you start working, and you see that something is not working. You see in the silence, in the sighting, in the reactions, you see that there is something that maybe it's a pressing issue, like another team that is on the field. And if you keep on pressing, okay, well, we'll continue with the list of questions that I prepared in advance, you will miss an opportunity to actually support this person. It really permits you to react, to see the person in the now, with their needs, with their desires, with their questions they have, and maybe find a better, sometimes it happens to need to change the whole plan. Why? Because maybe you unlocked something that is more important for the person in this exact moment.
This is why, as I mentioned yesterday, we need to be egoless. Because at that moment, we are an instrument for the personal development of the mentee. And that's possibly a very difficult part for us. So imagine for me, I love talking, imagine me shutting up. It's very difficult. But I do that because I know it serves another purpose. I'm in another role. I must not speak, I must not share information, I just listen. And again, listening is energy drowning. Because while you listen, you develop all sorts of thoughts about, what that person is trying to tell me. Because it's not only words, it's whatever comes with it. She or he might be polite enough not to say some words. When I'm a mentee myself, I swear a lot whenever I'm angry, because I share my anger, and I can only share my anger by saying bad words. I mean, you need to be direct, you need to feel confident enough to be able to swear without being judged. Okay, it's much more than that. And this is why the mentor needs to be trained enough, smart enough, sensitive enough to understand all these mechanisms. It's not easy. Because we have our ego, we have our story that we want to put on the table, which we eventually are. But it's much more than that when it comes to support that person without being prescriptive. You understand the thin line, it's very thin. So, Samuel, what you said yesterday, that you have a list of questions, that might guide you, but bear in mind that the plan might go in a completely different way. That you might ask one out of those 10 questions, and then you might talk about something that is not totally related to the core of the session. Okay, you need to embrace flexibility, you need to embrace change, you need to embrace impromptu, like improvisation. And these are tools that you learn. You need to be theatrical. And I like to say that the mentor needs to be creative. Creative, because you need to use whatever is in your power, whatever is in your background to support the mentee. Through movies, through music, through arts, through theater, through comedy, through sports. Use whatever means you have in your power, in your hands, to reach that person. And it's mind-blowing. The moment you find that you can connect on the same chords, a whole new world opens up. But you need to be thoughtful of that. You need to know what expectations you might create, and you need to be aware of your boundaries at the same time. So again, it's complicated, it's complex, but it's wonderful. It's so diverse that it's part of how you lead human relationship in a proper